They mistook your pause for weakness. It was God tying back your hair. Your silence wasn't retreat, it was the inhale before destiny spoke. They chuckled at your quiet. Now tremble beneath your echo. My child, even thunder waits its turn. They giggled through your silence. Now flinch through your storm. You weren't broken, you were in blueprint. They laughed at a volcano praying. Now run from its ash. My child, your hush held more power than the noise ever did. They mocked your stillness. Now pray your thunder forgives them. Silence is how divinity gathers velocity. You stopped explaining. That's when the miracles started. They wanted reaction, you gave them revelation. My child, they forgot, lightning always follows still skies. They danced on your quiet. Now drown in your rain. You didn't shrink. You simmered. Their jokes fed their ego. Your silence fed the heavens. They didn't see you sharpening beneath your sorrow. My child, storms don't boast, they arrive. They called you dull. Now you're blinding. You whispered through storms. They shouted into silence. They can't hear you now because thunder doesn't explain. My child, your silence raised oceans. You left quietly. Now they scream in your absence. Their laughter faded the second your thunder formed a spine. They only understood after the sky cracked open. They mistook your retreat for ruin. Your stillness was sacred, not stalled. My child, they thought you'd broken. You were blooming underground. Their laughs were loud until yours returned holy. You gave them silence. They turned it into loss. The storm didn't forget you. It was waiting for you to remember. They joked. You transformed. My child, your silence is now the weather in their bones. They ridiculed your pause. Now wish for your chaos. You outgrew the noise. They decayed in it. You prayed instead of screaming. The universe responded with fire. My child, you weren't delayed. You were divine timing. They confused emptiness with depth and drowned. You bent without sound. Now they bow without words. Their shadows didn't expect your sunrise. My child, the wind waited to carry your truth. You didn't fall back. You rose slowly. Their laughter did not survive your thunder. Your name was written in silence and sealed in flame. They needed your noise to feel safe. Now silence devours them. My child, your quiet made the ground whisper. They measured you by your voice. Forgot you were made of echo. You disappeared like prayer. Returned like prophecy. Their pride crumbled when your silence spoke louder than their applause. If this touched your soul, don't scroll, like, comment your favorite quote, and subscribe for more. They mocked the pause. You were rewriting the sound. My child, they made noise. You made impact. You didn't go quiet. You went holy. Their laughter was timed. Yours was eternal. They mocked what they couldn't carry. You gave them silence. They gave it meaning. My child, your stillness was divine warfare. Their giggles aged into grief. They called you soft, then drowned in your strength. You were holy in hush. My child, they never saw you coming because you never chased. They celebrated your stillness until it rose like thunder. You were the eye, not the storm. They stood in the wrong place. They only heard your absence, never your approach. Your quiet unraveled their peace. My child, silence is heaven's stealth mode. You weren't gone, you were multiplying. They laughed at the seed. Forgot what rain feels like. You chose silence. It chose prophecy. Their joy needed sound. Yours required none. My child, stillness holds more thunder than rage ever could. They waited for you to break. You became weather instead. They thought you stopped breathing. You were becoming wind. Your hush became their haunting. You faded from their jokes. Now linger in their dreams. My child, your silence was crowned in fire. They mocked the wound, now bleed where you healed. You swallowed your pain. Then breathed lightning. They told you to speak. You chose to shake the sky. Your silence unsettled them for good reason. My child, they never respected quiet until it echoed with thunder. You wrote poems in your head. Now they're carved in lightning. Their noise gave nothing. Your hush gave the divine room to speak. They forgot the loudest storms begin underground. My child, silence turned your scars into wings. You didn't reply. That was the roar. They laughed at your healing, now watch from the other side of grace. Your quiet moved the mountains they worshipped. They never expected to need the silence they mocked. My child, thunder learned its voice from you. You didn't flinch. You forecasted. Their eyes scanned for pain. Your silence handed them reflection. They paused for mockery. You paused for transformation. My child, they failed their test by laughing at your stillness. You were writing thunder in invisible ink. You went inward. They spiraled outward. They missed your roar. But remember your absence. My child, their shame began where your silence ended. They feared you too late. You were gathering storms inside your ribs, and they cheered. They thought you'd fade. You became a frequency. You didn't stay quiet. You became too vast for sound. My child, your pause cracked time. They thought silence was surrender. It was strategy. You didn't echo them, you outlasted them. Their jokes turned to echoes. Your silence aged into scripture. My child, the quieter you grew, the more the divine expanded. You broke their laughter with your absence. They called your silence cold until it burned them. You were never gone. Just out of range. My child, you waited long enough to arrive eternal. They tried to shame your stillness. Now bow beneath it. Your hush cracked foundations they thought were firm. They feared your silence too late. My child, thunder doesn't warn. It arrives. You didn't fall behind. You became the timeline. They ridiculed your rhythm. Now follow your steps. They mistook your soul's rest for retreat. My child, you didn't lose your voice, you became a pulse. Their noise starved them. Your silence fed you. They laughed with open mouths. You responded with open skies. You went deeper. They got louder. My child, silence wrapped you in resurrection. They said nothing mattered. You proved everything sacred. They danced while you disappeared. Now beg for one more glance. Your stillness dragged their ghosts into daylight. My child, your silence realigned the heavens. They laughed at clouds. You arrived with rain. They spoke without listening. You listened without staying. You became a prophecy none of them believed. My child, they named you empty. Now long for your fullness. Their glee was temporary. Yours was tectonic. They never saw your silence, only their fear reflecting back. You became thunder, and they became regret. They said you were fragile. Now they're pieces. My child, your hush is the sound of justice coming. They laughed when you left. Now cry where you stood. You chose peace. Now they tremble before it. Their joy was borrowed. Yours was built. They mistook your pause for defeat, but stars don't rush to rise. You were silent, so heaven could echo through you. My child, they laughed before the lightning, now tremble in its glow. Your hush was sacred, not weak, not broken. Sacred. They laughed at silence, but thunder speaks last. You whispered with God while they shouted nonsense. My child, they mocked your quiet, but prophecy always begins in whispers. They forgot, thunder waits while the storm sharpens its name. You said nothing. Now your life is the loudest sound in their hearts. They wanted noise. You gave them consequence. Your silence gathered weight. They mistook it for absence. My child, your hush was heavy with divine momentum. They didn't hear the grief your silence carried. You were building worlds while they were breaking windows. They clapped before the bloom. You grew anyway. My child, you didn't retreat, you reloaded. They read your silence as surrender. It was resurrection. You spoke with your absence, and it still echoes. They underestimated the soul that doesn't scream. My child, you said nothing, and they heard everything. Thunder doesn't announce itself to cowards. They only heard the silence, not the ground trembling beneath it. Your stillness made heaven lean closer. My child, you were waiting for divine timing. They were chasing applause. They wanted spectacle. You became storm. You stopped explaining. That's when you became legend. Their laughter echoed short. Your silence lives long. My child, they fed on your stillness, then starved on your roar. They didn't know silence is the mother of miracles. You chose quiet power over loud approval. Your silence wasn't empty, it was sacred instruction. My child, you walked like dusk, quiet but full of power. They missed the holy weight behind your hush. Their noise covered nothing. Yours revealed everything. You were composing thunder. They were dancing in denial. My child, the divine always moves in silence first. They filled the air with mockery, you filled the sky with lightning. They called your stillness strange. The angels called it sacred. You left gently, and now every door remembers you. My child, silence is heaven's favorite weapon. They tremble now, not from guilt, but from what's arriving. You didn't need to shout. You became the storm. They missed the weight of your pause, and paid in peace. Your silence aged into prophecy. My child, even the clouds knew your name before it thundered. They forgot silence builds kingdoms. You healed in silence. They cracked while pretending to be whole. They mocked your hush. Now flinch at every rumble. Your silence didn't hide you. It anointed you. If this touched your soul, don't scroll, like, comment your favorite quote, and subscribe for more. My child, silence was your shield, and the sword followed. They didn't know, God speaks loudest through the voiceless. You weren't hiding, you were anchoring your storm. They celebrated too early. Thunder doesn't race fools. Your silence starved their chaos. My child, you walked out softly, and took the light with you. They called you hollow. Now echo your name with regret. You didn't disappear. You became deeper. They laughed during your winter. Your spring will blind them. My child, thunder respects those who bleed quietly. They thought your stillness was void, it was alignment. Your silence was louder than their applause ever was. They laughed before the bloom, now envy your roots. You vanished from their noise, and returned as atmosphere. My child, even the moon waits quietly before it shines. They silenced your song, but forgot the echo. Your pause rewrote destiny's tempo. They saw the hush, not the holiness within it. My child, the storm loved you enough to wait. They said you were nothing, now drown in the sound of your rise. You bowed your head, and the heavens rearranged themselves. They thought quiet meant powerless. Now watch you reign. Your silence wasn't surrender. It was sanctified breath. My child, they don't know what thunder owes your name. They chased noise. You became eternity. You were carved in stillness. They chipped at echoes. Their mockery couldn't survive the prophecy you became. My child, silence made you sacred, pain made you thunder. They didn't see you loading. They only see you now. You left without a word, and became all their questions. My child, your soul moves like weather, inevitable. They bruised your hush. Now ache for its return. You outgrew them in the silence they despised. They labeled you gone. The universe labeled you arriving. My child, you were not missing, you were multiplying. They called it weakness. It was worship. Your silence is their punishment. They now miss the peace they mocked. My child, they needed you loud to ignore you. You were building galaxies behind their backs. They forgot, silence is where gods dwell. They can't unhear your absence. Your hush became their haunting. My child, the quieter you grew, the more they trembled. They thought your pause was permission. It was prelude. You didn't break. You braced. My child, they laughed at stillness, but now live in shaking. They see your silence, and now feel the storm they earned. Their joy was loud. Your legacy will be louder. Your silence has teeth now, and they can feel it. My child, you were unspoken thunder. They mocked the silence. Now fear the sound. You didn't fall back. You fell inward, into glory. They never heard it, but your silence cracked open skies. My child, still waters drown loud souls. They danced on your pause. Now pray through your awakening. You became sacred by disappearing. Their noise scattered. Your silence planted. They watched the surface and missed the quake. My child, the universe hid you to restore you. They didn't know what thunder was becoming in you. You offered peace. They answered with mockery. Now live in war. They didn't hear your storm. Now they wear its weight. My child, even your silence had a spine. You were marinating in miracle. They forgot silence could stain a soul. Your hush shook altars. My child, they thought you were frozen. You were gathering flame. They talked over you. Now silence is all that answers. You weren't delaying. You were descending into power. My child, they tremble now, not from memory, but from what's to come. They called you empty. You were sacred space. Their time ran out in your quiet. They made noise. You became meaning. My child, silence is slow thunder, holy and unignorable. They underestimated a soul on mute. You spoke once, and the ground remembered. They turned their backs. Now face your sky. They wanted sound. You became scripture. My child, the quiet ones always carry lightning. They laughed at the pause, but skipped the page that followed. You didn't retreat. You reformed. My child, thunder doesn't argue, it arrives. Their voices faded. Yours became weather. You were the hush before a miracle. They mistook you for dormant. You were divine. My child, thunder doesn't ask for space, it takes it. They out-talked you, then begged for your presence. You were never small, just focused. They can't outrun what your silence summoned.